the the bio on the things. I don't like to waste time. Um, I don't know how everybody's dealing with it, like pretending like everything's normal from the pandemic.
I don't know. It's really blowing my mind. New York City, it's like everybody's back to true story. I was in a restaurant last week, second time out for dinner since early 2020, right? And I'm sitting there and I have a panic attack and I have to leave because it was just so dark and so loud. There were so many people talking, and I was sitting there going, "How are you all okay? How are you all just? How are you all fine?" And I literally freaked out. I had to step out for a second, but like I don't know how everyone's just like organized and showing up to the right place, at the right time, and totally okay, and matching outfits and
Oh,
like.
I've been a licensed therapist for over 20 years and I'm sitting in therapy and my therapist is like, do you think there's any part of it that's COVID related, Molly? And I was like, why, yeah. Why, yes, I do. It's an interesting point you're making. Thank you for that observation there.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I think also the trauma of it all is denying that it's happening, right? When it's one of the criteria of post-traumatic stress disorder is saying it's no big deal. And
Right.
like, I'm in your camp. I'm like, I'm not ready. I need a slower
Yeah,
roll,
I need to
please,
slow this
America.
down.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah, it's like everybody just thought that this day was going to come where we were all going to like burst out of our houses and rejoice in the streets. And it's like, now it's here and it's like, no, no, no. I need a minute, please.
I just need a slower rollout. Like honestly. And I need like some appreciation for the I just need a little bit more truth in it, not just like everything's awesome, like the Lego movie. Like this is life. It's not a Lego movie,
I agree with you.
I'm so excited you're here. I'm just it's a great thing to have a podcast because you get to know people so intensely and then you get to talk to them. And I did so much deep diving and gosh, I'm just such a fan. That's all I can say.
Oh,
I'm
thank
just such
you.
a fan. Have you ever heard that Maya Angelou quote? I bet everybody says this to you. It made me, when I was reading your book and listening to your TED talk, which is all fabulous, just you're so important. I mean, to the extent more important, your message is so important. And it says this, you are only free when you realize you belong no place, you belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great. And it made me think of your story when I read that, when I remembered that quote. Can
Thank
you tell
you.
us the thumbnail of your, I mean, we have a certain amount of time, but can you tell us the thumbnail of your story?
So where do I even start? Okay, so I started modeling when I was 13 and I had eating disorder. I developed eating disorders very, very young. And
Quick question about that.
Yeah, sure.
Because I always think about my own eating disorder and I had the biological predisposition. I had the trauma predisposition. I had all the predispositions. Did you come to it with predispositions?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely had all the predispositions, I think.
Which ones were yours?
Inevitable. I grew up with a lot of trauma. I grew up with a lot of abandonment as well. So I seek control in everything I do. And my eating disorder was like the best way for me to have like everyday control over in my brain, everything. But yeah, so I developed eating disorder. I grew up in the industry and I grew up with this. Not only is it difficult being a teenager, being a young woman and growing up, but I grew up with this force of the industry telling me that I needed to look a certain way. And as your body was changing, your body shouldn't be changing. No, keep it like this, be this size, look like this. And long story short, I moved to New York City. I was like at the height of my career and I absolutely just hit rock bottom. I took time away, went to Thailand, discovered Thai boxing, moved into like a gym on the side of the road, stayed there for 6 months, and I just forgot about my life in America and the fact that I was a model, and I kind of put these pressures aside, and I made the decision to start recovering. And then as I was going through eating disorder recovery, I came back to New York and I realized something's got to change, guys. Something has to change because the women that we should be looking up to, that are on our billboards, that are in our magazines, should be happy, healthy, genuinely confident women. And I think that yeah, I kind of came back to the industry fighting for some kind of like systemic change
Hmm.
to happen.
Hmm. I I am so curious about a deeper dive into the journey of recovery for you. It sounds like when you're trying to change this message, what are you trying to change it to to and from to? Like, what is the messaging that you think you were getting, and what is the messaging you think needs to come out?
I think, well, I mean, I think that the beauty standards, I mean, still are so narrow and specific. And I always think about this. I was a girl in the magazines, and I was suffering so much. I was setting that standard, and I was suffering so much. I couldn't live up to this unattainable standard that's being perpetuated.
Yeah, how are you suffering? Like, can you really bring us there with you?
I mean, I was doing absolutely everything that I could possibly do to be as small as possible, anything that could lose any weight. And that was, I mean, like I was starving, I was bulimic, I was addicted to laxatives, I was getting like illegal diuretics, substance abuse, cigarettes, like anything that I could help me support my livelihood almost. Like this was a matter of like work for me, you know?
I find it so interesting. This might be an assumption, but it also sounds like, and it never like that. That's just the great con of diet culture, right? Like, it's not like you would do all those things and you're like, I made it, right? It
Right.
was always like,
There's no end point.
right.
Oh, I see my cat coming. Sorry. Yep. She's freaked out. She ran away. Okay.
Right.
No, it's, yeah, I really believed that though. I really believe, you know, you have all these agents and these people telling you, you just need to be this size. You need that 1 centimeter less. You just need a little bit more. And you really believe when you get there, you'll be happy. And then you can just eat whatever you want and it'll be fine and life will be fine and all your problems will go away, when it never ends. It never, ever ends.
Yeah. Diet culture looks like such an abusive relationship, doesn't it? I mean, and then because then you keep on going back and you can, oh, it'll be different this time. I'll
Yeah.
just take the laxatives for this amount of time. I'll just not eat that. Like, and it's just, and then you hit a bottom. I'm so curious how it came to pass that you honestly even found this grace to take time off. Like, I would think it would be such a whirlwind there. The idea that you even had a moment to travel and find a a Thai boxing gym. How did you even come to that part?
So I completely hit rock bottom. I would say more so physically first and then emotionally second. So I actually got a phone call from my agent that said, you have this shoot in 10 days and the photographer's seen you and he doesn't like the shape that you're in. I need you to just shrink down as much as possible.
What does that
And
feel like when, like, and that's like a thing that happens often.
it's weirdly very normalized. I'd gotten this phone call, I can't even tell you how many times before. So that
And
was
like
something that,
usually you'd get that phone call and you'd be like, all right, cool. So
all right,
like, let
yeah,
me get some Coke.
it's normal.
Let me get some something and I'll like figure that
Yeah.
out. But this
Let
time
me
it just
just
didn't.
sign up to a 10-day juice cleanse. I don't know, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I remember she said to me, whatever you did for Sports Illustrated, you need to do it again. And what I did for Sports Illustrated was 10-day liquid diet. So I was on the phone and I broke down. And that was very unlike me because I'm normally very professional about this. I really compartmentalize that as like, this is my job. This is what I need to do to pay the rent. So I'll do it.
Right.
And I completely broke down and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to do it this time, but this is the last time. I just can't do it anymore. At this point, I was 27, living in a world where everybody was telling me that I needed to look like when I was 17.
Wow.
So my body had enough. I just couldn't do it anymore. I had reached a point, and it was, I'm so glad that happened. And I'm so glad that I listened to my mental. I literally, what I wanted to do, what my intention was for this trip, I booked a 10-day holiday and I just wanted to go be alone as far as I could get from Manhattan and cry and eat. Just be a fucking human, excuse my French, for a second and just cry and eat.
By the way, like, what a normal thing to want to do, right? You know, it's like the idea that was like a big dream of yours, right?
Yeah, that was a dream, to not be harassed, to not be looked at, to not be criticized, to just eat and hopefully not feel guilty about it.
Right. It's so funny. Like our stories are so different and the feelings are always the same. And I think it's such an important note to everybody, right? Because I'm like a hardcore binge eater, weighed 325 pounds, like ate my way through bariatric surgery, but I had that same exact feeling. Like I just can't do this anymore. Like diet culture addiction is like, it's like all we need to be talking about, I swear, because it's like, I just can't I can't do this pursuit of thinness anymore. And I can't do the self-harm anymore. And we just get these moments of grace, in my experience. They were just like, okay, maybe I'll try something different, which it sounds like this is the best part of the story. So then what happened for you?
So then I'm on my solo eating, crying trip.
My normal person eating and
Right.
crying trip.
I had to go to the other side of the world to go eat and cry. And I don't know, I drove past this gym on the side of the road and then I was like, can I try? And they were like, sure. And I tried and I fell in love with it. And I came back every day, came back twice a day. I kept calling my agent, saying, I'm not coming back yet. I'm not coming back yet. And then I just packed up my bags and I moved into the gym and I was like,
But like, how did you make that decision? You're like a boxer at this point.
So it just felt so good. It just felt like I was exploring my body in a completely different way. Nobody ever asked me what I did. Nobody cared about how I looked. It was all about what I was doing and how I was, and technique and like things like that, that I was realizing my body was being appreciated and explored in a completely different way. And I wanted to continue down that path. I liked how this felt. I liked the anonymity of it. I liked that I didn't have any material things. Nobody knew who I was. I don't know. It felt right. And I, for once in my life, just went with that.
And how did that so you didn't like do like, this is what healed you. You didn't go to therapy. You didn't like go to nutritionists. You didn't go like a 12-step group. This is, say it for me. Muay Thai boxing?
Muay Thai. Yeah.
Muay Thai. I'm winning today. Muay Thai boxing literally heals your eating. Just actually makes a ton of sense to me as an eating disorders therapist. And I want to get into the nitty gritty of that.
Well, I think it opened the door for me. I think the door is opened for different people through different things, right? Whether it is therapy or education or I don't know, whatever it is for you, but that opened the door to me. And I understand there are some difficulties there because a lot of people replace their eating disorder with like this fitness addiction or with like what's it called when you're obsessed with health?
Orthorexia?
Orthorexia, right. And it was, that wasn't it. It wasn't like it wasn't that for me. It was like the philosophy behind martial arts, almost the learning of yourself every time you step on the mats.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just hear the word that comes up for me when I listen to your story is just embodied. It's like, I think something that really happens and like modeling's like putting gasoline on a fire. It sounds like it's like we actually lose like connection with our actual physical presence.
Totally. It was like I'd always looked at my body as a completely separate thing from me. Yes. It was the thing that I hated, that it was just an image for me. And it was about changing it. And never ever for a moment was I just present in my body and accepted it and appreciated it ever. And I went on this journey of, you're right, like connecting with my own body. And it's crazy that once you do that, the like anxiety, the depression, all these things that were like really weighing me down just kind of lifted a little bit because I was like, this is me. I really accepted that.
How did you make sense of eating though? Because it's like, it sounds like your normative was like egg
really
whites
hard.
and an avocado.
Yeah, it was really,
you can't eat that and be a fighter, right?
No, it was really hard. To be honest, it was a lot of like, there was a lot of binging. There was a lot of figuring it out. But I lived in this gym with these like Thai fighters that didn't speak English and I just ate what they ate. And they were telling me things like, after training, you have to eat rice. And like, when you wake up, you have to eat like, they have all these little things that they live by. Like you need energy, you need power.
Wow. And you weren't, what I think is so interesting is that like, you weren't like immersed in culture. Like you weren't immersed in diet culture.
Yeah. I was living in this world where they eat to function to fuel their body.
Right. You were like scrolling, being like, oh, wait, should I do like that? Should I sign up for that? You were just like in with these people who are eating to fuel their bodies. I mean, I get how that can really heal somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was completely removed. I wasn't looking at magazines. I wasn't buying outfits. Do you know what I mean? Like I was
Totally.
totally removed from the diet culture world.
It's a fascinating way. So then what happened? Like, so you had this little healing, and then how did you make it stick?
I think what I learned about myself then perpetuated me forward. So what I really went through a lot. I was alone. It was just me and myself every day and my body. And um, I'd gained weight and I felt great. I felt happier and healthier than I had ever felt before, but I'd gained weight and I couldn't
How did
understand.
you rectify that?
I
Yeah.
couldn't understand how my value then, because I've been taught that my value, my literal monetary value, would decrease if I was bigger. So I just couldn't understand how my value was decreased when I was finally happy and I felt like I was getting healthy and I was getting happier and I was how a human being should live their life, right?
Yeah.
I felt like I hadn't been living for 27 years. I'd just been fighting myself for no freaking reason.
Right.
So it was really about, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to go back to New York and I'm going to give it a go. Maybe the industry is going to tell me, sorry, Mia, we're not buying it. It's time for you to retire. And okay, fine. Then I take that L and I would be like, okay, the industry's not ready to change. I don't have the power to change the industry, but I came back and clients embraced it very slowly, very slow. I had like one client, I mean, Sports Illustrated they didn't care about my size. There were clients that gave me hope. There's like little straws of hope that I was grasping on. And then here I am. I don't know.
That's amazing. And then it's amazing. I mean, it's also, I sort of dissociated when you said didn't care about my size, because I was like, I can't believe this is a thing that we have to talk about. Like, it breaks my heart. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And the industry is crazy because they have clothes and then you have to fit the clothes. They have a sample size of clothes and you have to fit them. And if you don't get the job. But then to actually start to take in that notion of like, oh, but wait, we can change the clothes.
Right.
It's like
Right.
groundbreaking.
Who knew?
Who knew? Who
Who
would have
knew?
thought?
No, it's so interesting. So then where did it happen? Yeah, I mean, I love your Instagram. There's this post on your Instagram. It's so real. I mean, I guess I wonder, how did you take this to messaging? Because there's this one on your Instagram. I wrote it down because I loved it. It was like so me.
I'm like, oh my God, what did I say?
It's so great. You're like sitting there. You look like really pretty. And you're just like, sometimes I feel invincible. Sometimes it takes me 3 hours to get up and shower. It's a process.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, like totally.
Yeah.
There's just this realness to you. I'm like, me too. It's not always like,
I think that Instagram has enough. I think the world has enough unattainable expectations. I think the world has enough like Fitspo. The world has enough like aspiration. I don't know. I just think like what we need is relatability.
Mhm.
And yeah, I post a lot of stuff of me doing Muay Thai and but it's also like the part that you don't see is when I took myself 3 hours to convince myself to go to the gym. Like,
Right.
show that part because that's real.
Right.
I just think like we need to be a little bit like easier on ourselves because I was so hard on myself for the majority of my life. I wish I just let myself be, like just exist and be okay with that and not just take the weight off your shoulders for a second and breathe.
Have you always been this brave though? Like, I want to talk about the TED Talk because I have like 100 quotes from it. I was like,
I don't like that TED. I actually,
really?
if I did it again, I would do it completely differently.
Well,
But
I do feel that I feel that way about my book sometimes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, isn't that life? Well, just to let you,
things that I said yesterday, I'm like, oh, today I would not say
for
that.
me, it's so funny. It changed my life. Like I remember I was like making a salad while I was listening. I had to stop what I was doing because it was like, it's really beautiful and important just in your own perception of things. I loved every minute of it. I thought it was incredibly
Oh,
powerful.
thank
So
you.
just little perspective switch over there. I mean, are you cool with talking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How can you tell us a little bit about I just love it. I think everybody should listen to it. I think everybody should read your book, but it's a quick intro to you too, and it's powerful. Are you always that brave though? Like, have you always been that brave?
I think I was really like muted by the modeling industry for a very long time. When I was a kid, I was like not very afraid of things, I guess.
We got bullied as a kid too, though,
Yeah,
right?
I was really bullied. I think I was muted for a long time. And I think that I grew up with this, like, it doesn't matter what you say. And in fact, better that you be quiet because all that matters is what you look like. And I really took that to heart. And I think, unfortunately, at the age of 27, I started to unlearn what I had been taught. But no, I don't think I always was. There was a long period of my life where I unfortunately wasn't so verbal about my opinions.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my curiosity is about how does that shift? Like, how did you get into that bravery? Because you're sitting and talking this TED Talk, you're talking about the deepest and darkest secrets that you have, right? I mean, and we're only as sick as our secrets. And then you're like this line about you'll never be able to influence the world by trying to be like it. I, I like needed to hear that. I need to hear that every day of my life.
I mean, I remember the exact moment when I was in Thailand and I was on this journey with myself and I was hitting the bags by myself. And I remember thinking, like, but wait a second, I'm exactly the same woman. I have an education. I've lived in different countries by myself. I'm this woman that I'm actually really proud of being. And a woman that when I was a kid, I only dreamed of being. Why am I so miserable? Why do I hate myself so much? Why do I wake up every day and look in the mirror and hate what I see? Why? And I remember having that epiphany of like, there's of the embodiment of like, it needs to come together. Like I can't love me and the person that I am and hate my body. It's like it's all one. It's all
Yeah,
together.
I think that's right. And so do you ever get like self-conscious? I mean, you're just always
Absolutely. I'm
so,
human.
I know.
I'm totally human. I tell people think that's the thing. People think confidence and self-love is a final destination too. When it's
Mhm.
not, it's an everyday process that we're on for the rest of our lives. Like I'm human. I have my crap days. I have days where I just want to like wear my period pants and not see anybody. Like it's totally normal, you know? Like we will always have insecurities. It's about getting comfortable with them and getting comfortable with the fact that we will always have them.
How do you do that? Like what are do you have any like daily rituals or things like that that you do to
I
find
mean,
your
I
way?
I personally think it's for me anyway. A lot of my insecurities, a lot of my issues comes from trauma. I think, and I'm in trauma therapy, and for me, I think it's
Me
like
too. Oh,
getting to know yourself, but like really getting to know yourself to like
yeah.
unpack your traumas, to understand why you are the way that you are. Like for me, it's like getting to know you can't love yourself without getting to know yourself,
Yeah.
and I think for me, it starts there. It starts with the traumas.
I love that. And so it sounds like you're doing some of that work where you have to look at the shadows and really,
Yeah, it's tough work. Man, it's tough work, but
can we talk about that for a minute? I feel like everybody thinks that everything should be easy.
yeah, and people think self-love is like, doing a face mask on a Saturday
Getting a
night, but
massage.
yeah, no, it's tough work, but I really think like you can't really love and respect yourself unless you really know yourself and you really have to get to know yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had so many people quit therapy with me right before we're about to do the thing.
Oh, really?
Oh,
When it
yeah.
gets tough, they quit when it gets tough.
I mean, doesn't our culture support that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just know from my own personal journeys and the many therapies I've sat in, it's like I find my personal power sitting through those rainstorms and
Mhm.
learning I don't melt.
Okay, it's time. Sorry, it's time for her to. Can't do that. I can't do that.
Who knew cats were as tricky as dogs on
No,
podcasts?
they know when you're giving your
I'm
attention to them.
telling
Same
you.
thing, they know. But no, I agree with you. I think it's really easy to replace one thing with another. It's really easy to just keep going. I think the harder thing to do is kind of sit tight, look in the mirror, sit through all that discomfort
Yeah.
and keep going and understand that's a process. It's not a destination.
What inspired you to go look at your shadows? Like, how did you make that decision?
To be honest, it was what really sorry, she's back. I have to put her back. My anxiety. I have really debilitating anxiety.
Mm.
And I couldn't understand I couldn't understand it. I was trying to develop a relationship with it. I talk about it in my book. I talk about the first time I had a panic attack in my book. It's been a roller coaster ride. It's like, it's there sometimes, it's completely gone sometimes. And during the pandemic, I was left alone with absolutely nothing but myself. And all these things that I received validation and like these things that perpetuated me, like money or jobs or, validation, things like that were suddenly gone. And it was just me and myself, and my anxiety flared up. And I really had to look at why. And that's when I started trauma therapy. That's when I really started to like understand how my nervous system was programmed to be this way.
Yeah, I think that is so amazing. And also, I love this, when I was writing my book, giving all this advice and this toolbox and the this and the that. And I'm like, if I don't write a little paragraph on, hey, you know what? If you can't use this toolbox, there might not be anything wrong with you. You might just have trauma.
Right.
And there ain't a toolbox in the world, like what you're saying. Like I can like read the Rumi quote and get like friendly with my anxiety. But like at the end of the day, like trauma lives in the body and trauma needs to be treated in the body. And I love what you're saying. It's like, I love podcasts where we don't talk about the thing we're supposed to talk about. Cause like, that's the message, right? Like,
you know how long it took me? I would actually say I had this breakthrough this week. It was to understand there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
That I really had that breakthrough this week. I always thought experiences I'd gone through, traumas I'd gone through, disorders that I developed was me broken. And I was just trying to fix them. I was just trying to get to normal because everybody else is normal. So what's wrong with me? And this week, I just realized maybe there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful point to reach. Like everybody sign up for trauma therapy.
Well, that's right. But like also public service announcement, like you have to sit through the rainstorms. Like I don't think every day in trauma therapy was like, I am okay. Right. Like there's days in trauma therapy where you're like, should I go back next week? Like I'm like a ball in the corner. And then we go back and then we get like, I'm sure fighting has this metaphor, right? Like no risk, no reward, right? Like,
right. You get knocked down, you stand back, you have to stand back up. There's no other choice. Like you either stay down and get defeated or you stand back up.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the whole story, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. So in this TED Talk, I mean, also like, I just think I don't know, I came from I came from a lot of early childhood trauma, and it's like those messages get in your head. Like we're not adults, so they get in our head and we're like, yeah, like it is me. It's not my parents. Like they're my God figures. Like there can't be anything wrong with them. So I'm wrong and I'm wrong. I've had to undo that so many different ways. I'm so glad you did that.
Mm-hmm.
You're amazing.
Or I'm still doing it. Like that's the other thing that people, probably the number one question, you must get this a lot too, is like, how did you recover?
I'm like, I went back to trauma therapy last week.
Right. Like as if there was like a short to-do list and all you need to do and then you recover. It's like, I always tell people, it's like the most important thing for me is making that decision to go on this journey and understanding that it's a journey. It's not like there's any quick fix to anything. You have to do the work, and however much work you put in is like, correlates to what you get out of it.
I think the first time I could ever even consider liking or loving myself might have been the day that I understood that this is a process. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like right when you get stuck in the diet culture of it all, like end game, you should feel all better. Like I think the day where I was like, maybe it's not that.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe it's sunshine some days, rain cloud some days.
Yeah,
maybe it's
and that's totally fine.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. So what are you doing now? Like talk us through like
So now I'm sitting on a podcast, right. No pants on.
Candace podcast, meowing cat.
No, I mean, I wrote a book, which is cool.
Yeah, how's that?
It was great. It was a real process. Let me tell you that. Like I tried my best to be as vulnerable as I could be. I didn't want to write a book that was like, everything is fine and you will be fine. I really wanted to like bring people down into my, kind of show them what my traumas are and bring them down into my shadows.
Yeah,
And
how exhausting was I only did 10
oh, it's so
pages of that
exhausting.
in my book, and I slept for like two weeks after I wrote 10
Yeah,
pages of
it
my
was so
story.
exhausting. I don't think people realize how I had to relive, like, what were they wearing? What did it feel like? What did it, again and again through every freaking draft of the book, like every read, it was just, yeah, it was but a very rewarding experience at the end, but it was truly exhausting. She's now trying to climb on the laptop. Sorry.
I just feel like, should we interview her? Like, what does she need? I love cats.
But yeah.
So anyway, so writing the book. So you wrote, yeah. So it was a process, and now where are you with it?
I'm still modeling. I'm still in New York. I just I mean, you know, COVID. It's still, our industry is still recovering because obviously it's a very in-person thing. But I don't know. To be honest, people always ask me like, "So what's next?" I'm like, to be honest, don't really know what I'm doing tomorrow.
I love
So
that. I think it's the best answer ever.
yeah, I mean, like our industry is very like, you don't know what's happening and you don't know what's going to come your way. You don't know what opportunities
I
are
mean,
gonna come.
what industry isn't like anybody who who believes that they're on a path. I mean, you know, we
Yeah,
plan and God laughs, you know that one. So
right.
question, like you talk about rediscovering your own self-worth. The book is so good, by the way. I just think writing a memoir is just black belt bravery. That's all I can say about
Oh,
that.
thank you.
Well, one like yours, you know, just,
Thank you.
and what a gift. I think, yeah. So in talking about like finding your own self-worth, like what do you think people can do? I mean, yes, trauma therapy, but like, are there other things that you would say that people can do to like help them rediscover their own self-worth?
Ooh, what a question. I mean,
In your own experience, you know?
I think there's lots of things that people can do to just rediscover their own self-worth. I don't know. I don't know. That's a really, that question really threw me off. But I really think that someone said something to me once and it really stuck with me. And I really like almost tell it to myself every single day. But they said, have a love affair with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, as if you were in a relationship with yourself. Like have a real love affair with yourself. Like live your days like that. And I
Hold on a second, Mia. There's my cat. I'm like literally doing a podcast.
um who was that, by the way?
My mom.
Oh, I love
I'm
the
over
way.
staying at my mom's house. Just wants to let me know that she's going to do something, visiting them right now.
um
Meet my mom. She's awesome, but
yeah, I think I loved that. I never forgot that because I think that that's such a great perspective. It's like looking at yourself.
hard though. How
It's
would
really
we
hard.
break that down? Like if you think about when you were 20, when you were 26 years old, if someone had said that to you, just go into a love affair with yourself.
The things that I guess it's all about acknowledging and recognizing the first step is acknowledging and recognizing the great things about you.
Yeah.
And then appreciating them. Then the appreciation, I think, comes after just the acknowledgement.
I wonder about this. Like, do you think that, because I think it's, so when people talk to me about like, well, how do I fall in love with my body? How do I not hate my body so much? Like irreverently, but not really. My first response is like, how are you treating your body? Why in the world do you think you can get into a healthy relationship with your body when you're harming your body? And especially if you're knowingly harming your body.
Right. I
I
think
just,
that too is like relationship, understanding that that's a relationship. That's like you are forever in a relationship with this body. Make it a healthy one.
absolutely.
Treat it right. Love it. Like it's the same things we treat every relationship, right? It's like everything applies.
I just feel like part of you discovering your own self-worth was these actions you took that were like, I always think action is like 10 times thought, you know, like and how you took action on healing yourself and healing your body. Like, I think that was the foundation for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think I was really at the time I was really in a place where I felt like I had to. Like I was like playing with suicidal thoughts. I was like I mean, I'm every person I feel like almost every person who's experienced eating disorders can understand that cycle that you feel like you cannot escape from. We've all felt that
Yeah.
I felt like there was no way out, especially given what I did. There was no way out unless and then enter suicidal thoughts like that.
I wish they were watching the video. I'm like, my head's gonna fall off. I'm like a bobble. I mean, I felt exactly the same way on the other end of it. I'm like, there's no, especially when I ate through bariatric surgery. I was like, I mean, what's the, and I think for me, like the idea that like killing myself is not even like anywhere in a solution set anymore is its own miracle,
Right.
but so
I
linked.
fully agree. I fully agree. I think the fact that that's you nailed that. But yeah, I really felt like I was so far down that I had to take action. I had to do something. I had to do I had to take action.
It's grace though.
Yeah, it was all meant to be. I think if I had kept going and doing what I was doing and continue being a model and doing that, really bad things would have happened. I think that everything happened the way that it was supposed to happen.
Well, I think we get more than one whisper, but I don't know how often they come. Like I'll sit in session with someone and I'll say, listen, grace lasts 48 hours. If you want to take this opportunity right now, I encourage you to. I think it'll come again, but I don't know when.
Right.
Like, I think that that's because like, I don't know, I love that. Like you heard your truth and you're like, you didn't really have to, but you knew you had to. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right. I had like a sliver of self-love, I guess, left to know that I needed to do something.
yeah, I think our internal wisdom's insane. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of times just like in the ICU because of all the harm we cause ourselves.
So insane. Your internal wisdom is, I think, constantly trying to speak to you. It's
Oh,
just about like tuning in, you know?
it's also a teacher who's always like, there's no such thing as an unanswered prayer. You just might not like the answer, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
and part of your answer was like, you don't get to be so thin anymore, whatever. I don't know. My answers have always been like, wait, seriously? I don't want to do that hard thing. So the name of the podcast that you're on right now, in case you're wondering, is called What You're Craving. And I wonder what you think about that. Like what, eating disorders and addictions are so loud, and the body obsession is like, it just can take us out of everything. So when they asked me to do a podcast, I was like, I'm not talking about food. No way. Like
The
I'm talking
name
about,
misled me. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, so are we going to talk about what we're actually craving?
you're like dark chocolate. What about you? It's a pretty quick podcast. No, it's about like what's underneath the whole thing. It's really about like that beautiful TED Talk of yours. Like, what do you think we're really craving underneath all of it?
What a question, huh?
Thanks, Mia.
What a question. I don't know. Do you want to go first? Do you want to tell me what you think?
Sure. It's my podcast. I'll tell you what I think.
Yeah.
I think so. When I was in the darkest space of my life, I was craving connection. I was craving love. I was craving authenticity. I mean, things that are like my love language. My love language today is truth, authenticity, like laughter, like, just real truth. I think people are craving authenticity, truth, connection, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And not the kind of not, I just always think about like, I don't know, like when the noise comes up, like when you're an eating disorders therapist, like this is like the big question. Like when someone's like in that noisy food thing and sitting and talking, and I'm just like, in the absence of having all of these loud food thoughts, like what would you have to be talking about today? What would we have to be feeling today? And I think that's a big part of it too. We just move so fast that we forget that we need to feel.
Totally. I totally agree. I think very similar things for me. I think something underneath it all that I was really craving, or I still am in the pursuit of, is safety.
Mm,
Like, I think that's where a lot of I grew up in a really turbulent household where like my pillars of safety really weren't there for me. I think that's where a lot of my anxiety comes from, where the
yeah.
control, that my eating disorders were based on comes from. And same thing, like this acceptance of like being able to be just myself and just feel safe and have all my walls down and be accepted for that. I think that's what I was really looking forward to and what I am still on the pursuit of and always
Yeah.
will be, I think.
My first trauma therapist had this thing on his door and it said, our purpose in life is to love and be loved. And me too. I've really big early childhood trauma. And it's like, I just didn't know that that existed. And I had to I was late to the party, but I learned it. Like what you're saying, like I was late to the party and then I learned I was enough. I didn't have it in my bones to start with, but it's
Right.
possible. Look at us.
It's so possible. It's so possible. And I think that's what I wanted when people say, why did you write a memoir at 30 years old?
A dope
The
memoir,
one
by the
goal,
way.
thank you. The one thing that I wanted to people to kind of take away from it was that it's possible. Recovery is possible. Coming out of the shadows is possible. Whatever you want that you related to in that book, it's possible to go through those traumas and live a perfectly healthy, well, you know, some
Well,
well,
what's
yeah,
perfect and what's
why,
healthy.
yeah,
Fuck
right.
if I know.
But it's possible to be happy. It's possible to come out of on the bright side. I just wanted it to be like a message of hope.
Yeah. And it's possible to heal. I mean, you're living proof of it. I'm living proof of it. It's not easy, but it's possible. Again, like what's easy? Jeez.
Right. And
It's
also,
not, it's not like compulsive dieting's easy. Can we just also say that?
yeah, it's a full-time job.
It seriously is.
No,
Harder than trauma
these
treatment
things
in its
have
own way.
no, these things have to be talked about. I think that there's so much perfectionism out there, especially with social media. There's so much just like everything's fine and shiny and amazing. And even if it's diet culture, right? Like that looks great. So great from the outside that you're convincing people to sign up, right?
Yeah.
But I think that we need to talk about the work and the unlearning of that and what that looks like too, because it's so attainable and
Yeah.
it's so doable and it's right there. And yeah, it's up to you. And I think, and it's also about doing the work to unlearn all the diet culture stuff
Yeah.
that we've learned.
Well,
But
because it's shifting perspective is what you're saying, right? It's like you and I, the similarity I hear is like, I understand going to therapy is going to be hard. I just know it's worth it. Right.
right,
Like, and if you're going to say to me like 30 pounds in 30 days, like I'm going to be like, that's BS. But there's a time in my life that I'd be like, I'm just going to go do that fad diet because that's going to like, fill me up quickly and I'm not ready or I can't even fathom of doing that other thing, And I think what you're saying is I do the hard thing and that's how I rediscover my self-worth is you do the hard thing over and over and over again.
yeah, I mean, there are many, many times people also write to me all the time. I'm sure you get this too, where they're like, I'm really struggling, like as if that was the failure, right? And I'm
Oh,
like, no, that's part of it. That's part of it. You're supposed to struggle. That's part of it.
welcome. What are we here to learn?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it gets so hard and it's so uncomfortable when you're looking in the mirror and you're dealing with this stuff where you're like, you know what, it would be easier to just starve myself and do that diet and go back to that. Like, embrace it, go through it, stick to it. I think
Yeah.
that needs to be said too. People think
Yeah.
people think
I
it's
love that line. Pain is the touchstone of all spiritual growth. It's like, at least in my profession, I've never had someone come to my office and be like, hey, so everything's great, you
yeah.
know, just want to change my life. Only
True.
people come to me like, Molly, what do I do? And I always think the more desperate, the better when they come see me. Like when I get someone really down, I'm like, great. So we're really
Yeah,
going to do this now because you really want it. And that's what desperation breeds, desire,
absolutely.
right?
Totally. I agree with you.
So you're awesome.
So are you.
Check, check, check. Such a great time. I'm so glad we got to hang. I really am. I really am. And I just want to say, like, you really inspire me. I have to
I
say,
mean,
like, your
same,
social
likewise.
inspires me. You inspire me to be brave on my own social. I work on that really. It's hard for me. I'm just learning. And Orla, thank you for that.
Thank you. First thing I'm going to do is go get your book too. I'm super inspired by
Well,
you. You're awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you
It's
so
really,
much.
really cool that you're doing this too. I think these conversations need to happen.
Me
They
too.
really need to happen. People need to listen. So many of us are going through this that don't even realize that we are. So many people are
Mia,
in this
that's the
pursuit.
note. That's the note of the abuse. Like people don't even know that they're stuck in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mean, I deal with this shit all the time on social media when people are just so consumed in diet culture they don't even know. They're so fat phobic they don't even know. Like it's just
Absolutely.
that's the hardest part for me is like you don't even know there's a problem and you're part of it. Like I
But that's how we know it's an that's how we know it's an abusive relationship or an addiction,
absolutely,
right? Because people are like, there's nothing wrong. What do you mean? I'm just going to the gym 5 times a day. I'm just
yeah,
eating an egg white and an avocado.
right.
And
This is
you're like, no, please stop. Please stop. It hurts.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So well done. I think that this is a really cool podcast you have, really cool thing going on. I'm into it. I'm so into it.
I mean, great. Cause I've been all in since 3 weeks ago. So we're really good to go. So God, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have an awesome day. Say hi to your mom.
I sure will.